Be number 3. Today's post I'm going to title Constance Luedicke. I want to clarify, this is her law office, and we're in a public venue here. I never looked for where Miss Luedicke lived or anything. The reason I realized, and it made me think about some other things, is I read the newspaper, as most of you know, and I saw an editorial by Constance Luedicke. A comment, in the comment section, not an editorial. And I remember it because she complained about the Schlitterbahn water park on Padre Island. And she said some people, that's how I knew she lived somewhere on the island. Some people that live here, it's like a trash heap. And she criticized the leadership of Corpus Christi, saying, when Nero fiddled up while Rome burned. I remember that little thing. Well, then I said, oh, she must live like right by the Schlitterbahn. Now, the things I told you on the first video, I would verify that in a court of law. That Miss Luedicke, whose law offices are right here, I already posted the link to her law office site. And this is where I spoke with her as my lawyer, which I was uncomfortable being alone with her. Okay? Let me just tell you that. I was uncomfortable being, she has an office upstairs. I also, and most of you that know me, if I think I try not to, the money thing with me, I don't like taking services for free. If people are doing the free feedings, I don't eat the food. I don't eat during the day. But, when I had her as my lawyer, I apologized a few times. I said, oh, I'm sorry you have to do all this for free, because she was a court-appointed lawyer. And she never told me. I believe it wasn't for free. I believe the lawyers who rotate, this is the law offices upstairs of Miss Luedicke, where I would be very uncomfortable being alone, which I had to be in the once or twice where I came down here. Let me just tell you that. So, because I thought it was for free, and she never told me, oh, John, I'm getting reimbursed for this. I didn't know that. So I gave her things of monetary value, not as a bribe, but I thought it was free. And she accepted that. She should have told me, John, you don't have to buy. And I did it out of a charity, thinking I felt guilty that, all these problems. Now, I don't know if it was illegal that she received that, but maybe she didn't keep it. It was like a law thing that I found about in a Christian bookstore. I don't know how much I paid, and I don't know if it's illegal. It was illegal for Miss Luedicke to tell me she never wanted to hear about any police abuse or any police illegal activity. And I guarantee you she told me that. And that's how I knew she lived on Padre Island. Now, my son-in-law invited me to something that was like a Burning Man thing they do on the island. The Burning Man, I think, is something out in California, but they had another name for it. But it's sort of, I'm familiar somewhat with it. And I don't go, when I jump in the ocean, I went to North Beach last week. I don't go all the way down. Like, if I'm going to go swimming at the island, I normally actually walk by where the concrete boardwalk is, but if I go to, I usually jump in where Bob Hole Pier is, if I'm going to swim there. But we went down that 6-8 months ago, whenever. It's kind of a hippie thing, I guess. And at first, it was fine, and there was no problem. But there was somebody topless. And did you look? Actually, I did not. I saw the lady from behind. And then I realized there was a lady also, I think we did a video, there was a girl there with like a a mermaid, actual mermaid like bathing suit, and it was okay. There was a cop that kept talking, and somebody commented, yes, he comes here to check out all the girls' line. There was some elderly people I saw skinny dipping. I didn't look or stare. I've seen. Now, if you were to ask me, John, are you insinuating that that was me you saw? I would simply say I have no idea if it was you. So I'm not saying it was you, Miss Luedicke. But can you imagine if I actually saw you clothed? Or if I reported maybe things that, maybe you said things that were improper when I met you here. Maybe you did. Can you imagine how outraged you would be? Now, these things I'm just telling you, I'll be honest, I don't know if the people I saw, I never knew Miss Luedicke lived out there. There were older people that were, I guess, like the community of skinny dippers, maybe you could call it. I have no idea who those people were. I drove past those people. But the one thing I would say, can you imagine what gives, the thing I would tell you for sure today is what Miss Luedicke said on the first video. I just made this one. I wanted to verify that I did. The only reason I knew she lived on Padre Island was she wrote that little thing in the Calder Times. And her name is quite unique, So I said, oh, this is Constance Luedicke. But she did indeed tell me never to speak or bring up any illegal activity by police. And the reason, I'm sure people thought John might, look, Chief Simpson, when I told him, and I reported that Tommy Nichols tried to run me off the road, but that wasn't new. He's been involved in things like that. But he didn't give a response like Miss Luedicke gave. I think he talked to Tommy, because after I emailed him, that's when the running off the road. When I emailed Chief Simpson, I said, because he would follow me, Tommy Nichols. That's when the incident of the running off the road, after I emailed the chief. And when I spoke, actually this is Williams or Airline, and when I spoke to that cop at Internal Affairs and said, man, that cop's involved in every injury, they weren't responding like, don't ever bring that up. They were like, okay. So she did wrong. She also violated her oath. Now, the little thing I bought her, might have been, I don't know, $20 thing. It was actually, well, I'll tell you what it was. It was from the Christian bookstore right over here, actually, Mardell now, I think it's called. And they had like the scrolls of the law, the Old Testament covenant, and it was something like that, but I felt like, oh, I don't want to take the services for free. But she should have told me, no, I get paid for all this. Inform me of that. And I mentioned her multiple times. I feel bad because, we got to do all this for free. I believe they get paid. So I wanted this, if for anything, I want you to know, that's the only reason I know. I know her law offices is right here. When the Dirk case, and you've seen me write on Dirk, but when Dirk, I tried to help all the friends fairly. When Dirk stabbed Tennessee, case I talked about, but at that time I helped Dirk with his dog. I kept going around my house, and I was in contact with Dirk's lawyer, simply because I said I'm going to help on both sides. I visited Tennessee. Just to help, not to cover up. But at one point, and everybody knew that, Dirk's story was a lie, and my friends, some of them, you see me, Albert Hoffman, he was there that day, he was one of the witnesses. But I remember as I spoke to Don Edwards, the lawyer of Dirk, court-appointed lawyer, I remember saying, he was trying to convince me to get Dirk to plead to, assault with a deadly weapon. He would still have to do a few years in prison, which if he had to, that would have been okay. But at one point I told Dirk's lawyer, I said, look, I'm not defending Dirk, and nobody believes the story that Dirk told. I said, but Tennessee, from all we know, has left the state, it's fled the state. I said, how could you actually bring a case if Dirk holds out, which he did? He just sat in the courthouse for like 7 or 8 months and did not take a plea deal. I said, but if Dirk, how could you actually have a case and go to court if the victim is not here at all? Meaning Tennessee didn't want anything to do with testifying against Dirk or any of that. And Don Edwards assured me, oh, no, because of statements Dirk made. He kind of assured me, no, where he's going to, do time regardless. It's better if he takes a plea. And I believed his lawyer was telling me the truth, and then Dirk would call me on the phone from the courthouse. I visited Dirk. I said, well, it looks like he's being honest with me, Dirk, and he thinks it's better. Then, when the day came and this was Mark Skirka's time, they kept saying, we're going to get you, like the trial's going to go bad for you. And then Dirk got out. He pleaded to some misdemeanor and was out. Then I realized, man, that lawyer was kind of working, the lawyers were working, and Dirk's got wisdom. He said, John, all of the lawyers, and it says, they all work together. They all go out to eat together with, prosecutors, DAs, Miss Luedicke. They all work together. He said, and they talk behind the scenes. Like, well, we think this would be best for this and this. And then they will tell the clients, maybe differently. And I realized that. For today, I want you also to know Sandra Watts had nothing to do with my case at all. She wasn't the only thing with Sandra Watts was the jury duty. So that'll show you I'm not just like, she was simply the jury duty thing, which I already told you yesterday. She had nothing else to do with anything else. But the things I would verify, see, other things you could say, I'll just say, if I said you made an offer to me, Miss Luedicke, if I said that while we were alone, maybe something like, I want to view evidence, but I'm not saying that. But if something like that transpired, then it would go to court that Miss Luedicke possibly made unless you have recording devices or whatever, which is fine, I don't care. I never said anything wrong to you. But then it would be testimony. Or if I said, you disrobed. And you would be highly outraged if I made an accusation like that. And then later it said, well, actually, I was just mad at Miss Luedicke for some other reason, so I said she disrobed. But we think we should still go for... You would be outraged. Did John say I exposed my vagina to him? Or you would say, how dare anybody ever say that? But you speak openly in this system about accusations that are made and all. I'm not saying any of that happened. I'm trying to have... What I will tell you, at least that I have enough that I would say for sure I would go into court. Miss Luedicke certainly told me she never wanted to hear any more about illegal activity by the cops. Or she said, don't ever bring that up again. And it made me wonder. Her response was worse than the PD itself. Meaning, when that came up to the PD, I'm sure Chief Simpson spoke to Tommy Nichols. And when I spoke to the Internal Affairs young man, I don't know if he's still an officer, they didn't don't say it or anything. They basically, said, oh, if we got reports of cops going over the line. But Miss Luedicke was very different. She was, don't ever say that, don't ever bring that up, and I never wanted to be mentioned. And I'll tell you, if you're practicing law in this county, rated the second number 2 most corrupt, that would just simply tell me in a general manner that there are some judges. Yesterday I showed you a property owned by a judge over there. By the way, Patriot Dad wrote on Judge Bobby Galvan. And when I read some of this post from him, he talked about a lot more than you hear me talk about, because I'm not sure of everything, but there's some things I know. So that's how I first started seeing some But if there are some judges that are good, which I'm sure there are, and some that are not, some prosecutors good, but the response that Ms. Luedicke gave me to never bring that up again. And I did document to her through conversations. I said, oh no, this cop is pursuing me all over the place. And I think it was just she was mad because I said, you're Nichols, because of all the stories. But I'll tell you in a court of law, Ms. Luedicke made it very clear to never speak about or reveal any illegal activity with CCPD. Now, that would just tell me there's a possibility that she might be on the side of those that are corrupt. Whether it was her I seen, the elderly people that were in the community on the island, I would tell you I have no idea. But it could have been. Could you imagine? Can you imagine if I actually seen you clothed and said, no, I saw you unclothed? Oh, you would be outraged. You would be outraged. So, I don't think you should have took. When I gave you that $20 item, you should lie about that. I guarantee you if she was brought in a federal court because of federal investigation about criminality within, I guarantee you she would lie in one, she would lie under oath. I never told John that, I don't recollect. So to me, you should not be a lawyer in this town. You say, John's just personal. No, I've never mentioned the judge, the actual judge, in my other thing. I mentioned Watson only because to me some of those things look. So I wanted to clarify. I wouldn't put it past Ms. Luedicke to say, oh, John's hunting me down. No, I'm not, dear. You see, remember the article you wrote. Nero fiddled while Rome burned. How educated are you, Ms. Luedicke? It says you speak various languages. The Emperor Nero. Why did Rome burn, Ms. Luedicke? Why didn't you footnote your sources? Do you know why Rome burned? Rome burned because there was a megalomaniac, one of many who were 1st and 2nd century Roman emperors, I'll teach. Caligula, Domitian. But Nero was one of the many that were crazy. And Nero, you know what Nero did? Nero had a young boy castrated. And he married that young boy. Nero had certain games he played. Colosseum, Rome Colosseum, where the animals would attack the private parts. He was demented. But Nero, history tells us, set fire himself, set fire to Rome. And then blamed it on the Christians. And that's where you get the term Nero fiddled while Rome burned. But I'm sure as a very educated woman, as you are, who is obviously not educated in the law that says if one of your clients reports to you police criminal activity, you are never to respond to that client, never bring that up to me again. I'm sure you're familiar with that law, because as a lawyer who operates within Oasis County, if criminal activity is brought to you, particularly about those in authority, that is to be reported. And you should never tell that client, never speak to me about that again, which, dear, you certainly did. So maybe, I don't know, should we title this Nero Fiddled While Rome Burned by Constance Luedicke? And I would never feel safe. Let me just tell you that. I would never feel comfortable and safe being alone with Ms. Luedicke in her office upstairs. Okay? We'll just end with that.